KSN News at 6 begins now.
It's probably one of the biggest problems we have in Wichita right now.
A recovering drug addict has the same message as law enforcement. Dangerous drugs are here and lives are being lost.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Darren Dito. Law enforcement in South Central Kansas say they are fighting a drug epidemic as they see an increase in heroin and opioid prescription drugs on the streets. Last year, there were nearly 500 cases where these drugs were found. And they've also busted dozens of people for trafficking these dangerous drugs. The top forensic doc in Sedgwick County says as more heroin comes into the area, the potency can change for every hit, leading to more deaths.
But if you're taking the same little line of powder and either snorting it, smoking it, or shooting it up, one day you could have the right dose to get that desired high, if you will. You could inject the same amount of powder the next day and end up in my morgue.
And that warning from law enforcement officials today is that more and more heroin and opioid drugs are showing up in Kansas isn't lost on the survivors. KSN's Avery Anderson spoke to one who shared his story of overcoming a dangerous addiction. That's News 6 tonight, Avery.
Darren, a recovering drug addict tells me the disease eats at every aspect of your body. It creates darkness and pain, and sadly for many, they can never kick their addiction. But for one Wichitan, he was able to overcome the odds after 3 decades of use.
All right, Jim. You have a good day.
It started as a normal childhood for Brian Holmes until
Started hanging around with the wrong kids, and we started experimenting with alcohol, and it just went from there.
By the age of 10, Holmes found himself gravitating towards the streets, looking for acceptance from friends. Soon after, he was introduced to marijuana.
It just escalated from there.
Heroin, opioids, cocaine, and meth. Holmes experimented with all of it, and that led to serious addiction.
When I turned 21, I was a full-blown addict.
Then he hit rock bottom.
I spent 5.5 years in prison.
It was at the Norton Correctional Facility that Holmes started searching for help.
And the last time I was in prison, kind of sold my soul. You know, I found Christ at that time.
Holmes says through his 8 years of recovery, he has met many people going through the same struggles and learned the ugly truth about lethal drugs like heroin.
It is a problem, and we got young kids doing it. We've got old people doing it. 28, 21.
Holmes is relieved that awareness is increasing as people from all walks of life can struggle with heroin addiction.
I'm glad that they're recognizing and not stigmatizing it. You know, it's not a stigma, it's an epidemic.
8 years sober and more successful than ever. Holmes tells me if it weren't for his faith and others answering his cry for help, he wouldn't be standing here today.
Simple. There's hope. There's hope for you. All you got to do is reach out.
Holmes is currently leading several addiction recovery groups at his local church, Grace Revolution, and is involved with the Wichita Oxford House. Avery Anderson, KSN News.
Yes, a powerful message. Thank you, Avery. That epidemic claims more and more lives every year. Here's an in-depth look at the sobering numbers. In 2011, there were 133 fatal cases in Sedgwick County. Just 4 years later, that number had jumped to 211. That's nearly 2/3 of all heroin and opioid deaths in the state. According to the CDC, the state with the highest number, surprisingly, is Ohio, with more than 3,300 deaths.